Okay, so we were talking about the writing process. So once you have a first draft done, it's a good idea to get somebody to read it over, to look at it. So that person could be me, it could be a classmate, it could be your uh, significant other, a friend. So just having a second pair of eyes look over your paper is always a good idea. So if you're doing it, if you have, obviously we have a time crunch for this short 2-month class, so it's always a good idea to, do as much as you can ahead of time. However, even in short time constraints, so if you're running against a deadline, make sure you do a second reading if you have no one else to read your paper. So just make sure you do that once over, at least once over, to give your chance to revise if possible. So in your revisions, it's a good idea to look for those things that we talked about already. So are you adding transitions? Is your thesis as clearly stated as it could be? Do you have an interesting hook? So all those little things that can add up uh, and improve your writing just by tweaking little things. That's what you can do in your revisions. And then eventually you'll be ready to submit your paper and after you've done your revisions. So my advice, always, get started early and do multiple drafts if possible, or at least read it through before you submit it to catch some of those minor revisions that you can easily do and improve your mark that way. Let's go through this checklist. So I'll post this on the homepage, but these are some things that you can do in your paper to make sure that it's ready to go, ready to be submitted. So for format, is your paper double spaced? Have you written it in 12-point font? Does it have an original title that you came up with that indicates what the paper is about? And your title should be different than the title of the book or poem or whatever it is that you're going to be writing about. Have you included indication of your own name, course name, instructor's name, and date on the left-hand corner? So you don't need a separate title page for this course, so just include that information on your first page. And all pages should be have a page number on the top right-hand corner. Okay, and then your introductory paragraph, so we've talked about these already, but is there a hook or broad opening sentence? Is this sentence effective or engaging to the reader? Have you included the author's full name and the title of the text being discussed? Do you have a clear thesis statement? Is it narrow, or you make sure it's not too broad, you're not trying to do too much? Do you have clear and a helpful set of key points? So in your intro, you should give some indication of what your main points are going to be. And are these points matching up with your body paragraph? So you would introduce the points in the same order that you were going to talk about them in the rest of your paper. Body paragraphs, you need to have clear topic sentences. So make sure your first sentence for each paragraph is strong and clearly identifies what that paragraph is going to be about. Your topic sentence should also link to your thesis or be a main point of your thesis. So I should clearly see a connection between your topic sentence and your thesis. Do you have transitions between paragraphs? So adding words like similar to this point, this is also true, or in addition to blah blah blah. or however, the opposite is also blah, 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 blah. So we should have transitional words between paragraphs and between main points as well. So my advice, get a list of transition words either from your grammar handbook or online. Have them in front of you when you're writing and add those in too at points when you want to add more flow or fluency or show connection. Paragraph length. So this is something I look for. So is your paragraph too long? Is it too short? It should be, right in that 5 to 7 sentence range, and all be obviously about the same topic. So you don't want to be too disjointed or jump around within a single paragraph. And the content of a paragraph should match the topic sentence too, right? So you're staying on topic, you're not going off on a rant or off topic. Citations. So you want to make sure, this is a literary paper, so you need to cite quotations from the texts that we're reading. I said 1 to 2 per body paragraph, so you want to just make sure, depending how long your quotes are, that you're including enough evidence to prove your points. You're also commenting on those quotations. You're not just sort of throwing them into the middle of your paragraph and leaving it at that. So you want to include quotations from whatever it is that you're discussing as evidence. So you're also proving your thesis by using examples from the text. When you're paraphrasing, that just means you're not quoting it directly, you're just talking about what happened in your own words. So if you're paraphrasing details or giving some summary, it's used effectively. You don't want to, paraphrase someone else's ideas that you've read somewhere else and not give them credit. That's not a good idea. That would be sort of plagiarism. And you don't want to do too much paraphrasing where you're just end up doing plot summary either. So make sure that if you are paraphrasing or adding details that they're pertinent or important to your argument. Evidence has to be properly integrated, and we'll talk about that more closely. So how to integrate your quotations so it's nice and smooth and reads well. Line numbers, that's for drama. So this one, we should erase this. We need page numbers for citations. So you should include the author's last name and the page number for MLA citations. And if it's just a single author, single text, then you can just use page numbers is fine. Punctuation for quotations is correct, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, but making sure your quotation is properly integrated and punctuated correctly. Quotations are effectively chosen to prove the thesis or key points. Quotations are well set up and deconstructed or explained. So these are important aspects here. So make sure the quotations, any passages that you take from the book are important ones and effective and prove your points. And make sure that you're taking the time to explain that quotation in your own words and explain why it's important. So by deconstructing or explaining it, you're really sort of doing the work of explaining why you included it in your paper, what the quotation is actually showing. So this is a good practice to get into. So you're not just throwing quotations in, but you're actually doing the work of interpreting them. Conclusions. So for a conclusion, you want to make sure it's not too short or not too long. It should restate your arguments, but in a new and engaging way, so not word for word repetition of your thesis statement. Usually a conclusion will summarize all your main points, so what you've said in your paper. and avoid introducing new ideas. So you wouldn't add more new quotations or evidence in your conclusion. It's not a body paragraph. It's more of a summary and kind of bringing things together in a meaningful way. You can extend the thesis to broaden insights. So you want to make sure your conclusion has some sort of insight or larger uh, sort of rumination thoughts on the subject matter. Why does your thesis matter? Why does this book matter? Why is it important? That kind of sort of larger context. And the last line should be somewhat memorable. I know it's tough to do, but this is another way that you can sort of add your voice or give sort of more power or make your last statement profound. Then in terms of proofreading, spelling errors and grammatical errors are obviously, you want to make sure you catch some of those. No other grammar errors, apostrophes, contractions, run-ons, fragments, subject-verb agreement errors. So all of that grammatical stuff is important. Awkward or inappropriate language. So you just want to make sure you're not adding too much slang or inappropriate or offensive language. So avoid that and make sure you're talking, your language is clear. So being clear is more important than sounding smart. I like clarity. You don't have to sort of what I call thesaurus abuse, right? Where you just think you're trying to make yourself sound, more complicated or more intellectual by throwing in the word you looked up in the thesaurus. So try to just be straightforward, to the point, clarity, very important. Correct word choice and appropriate tone for audience. So again, academic papers, you can, elevate your word choice and choose an appropriate tone for your audience. So you're not too informal. You're using formal language, formal writing at this level. And then overall impression, so you don't have to flatter the author. So if you're reading, Timothy Finley's The Wars, you don't have to say, Timothy Finley is the greatest writer in Canadian history. It's not important to flatter the author. If it wasn't a great book, we probably wouldn't be studying it now. So it's sort of implied or redundant, so you don't have to say that kind of thing. Voice of the writer recognizable. So this is your voice. So make sure you're not overly relying on secondary sources, that your opinions are highlighted, and you're not just quoting, cutting, pasting. That kind of writing is not very effective. Make sure that you're doing some interpretation, you're adding your voice, your stamp on your paper. All of that is something we learn as we go, but even at this level, you can start growing as a writer. Oh yeah, no thesaurus abuse. I mentioned this earlier, but again, I think clarity is more important than, throwing out big words and jargon. So you can, of course, use the key terms that we've talked about in class. That's always a good thing. So it helps me see that you have been listening during lectures and are engaging with this discourse that we have going in our class. Other things, clear path from thesis to conclusion. So I can see the structure of your paper is clearly there. Meets the word count. Essay feels fluid and flows. Essay contains original insights. Tough to do, but again, having a unique point of view, developing your voice, these are important as well, and will take your paper over the top if you do add original insight. So it's the difference between like a 78 and an 85 would be how original, creative, insightful your paper is. 78 is a good paper.